The Frozen Fortress, Konigsberg's Last Stand. As Soviet tanks surrounded the ancient city of Konigsberg, 130,000 civilians found themselves trapped with 35,000 German soldiers who'd been ordered to fight to the last bullet. What followed was one of World War II's most brutal sieges, and one teenage girl's impossible journey to save her family. Anna Hoffman was 15 years old when the world ended. She stood at her bedroom window on the morning of January 13, 1945, watching columns of black smoke rise from the eastern horizon. The thunder wasn't a storm. It was artillery. The Red Army had finally reached East Prussia, and Konigsberg, the 700-year-old capital of German culture and learning, was directly in their path. "Anna, come downstairs!" Her mother's voice carried an edge of panic. Anna took one last look at her room. The bookshelf filled with Karl May adventure novels, the photograph of her father in his Wehrmacht uniform, the porcelain doll her grandmother had given her. She had no way of knowing she would never see any of these things again. Downstairs, the Hoffman family gathered in the kitchen. Anna's mother, Margarete, her younger brother Klaus, age 12, her elderly grandmother Maria, and her uncle Friedrich, who'd been invalided out of the army after losing his left leg at Kursk. "The radio says we must not panic," Margarete said, though her hands shook as she poured ersatz coffee. "Konigsberg is a fortress city. Gauleiter Koch has promised the Wehrmacht will defend us." Friedrich snorted bitterly. "Koch is a fool. I served with the Fourth Army. I know what's coming." He fixed his niece with a serious look. "Anna, you must listen carefully to what I'm about to say." Over the next hour, Friedrich explained the reality of their situation. The Soviet Third Belarusian Front, over 1 million men, thousands of tanks and artillery pieces, was advancing across East Prussia like a tidal wave. German forces were outnumbered and outgunned, and Hitler's orders were clear. Königsberg must be held at all costs. No retreat, no surrender. "But surely they'll evacuate the civilians," Margarete whispered. Friedrich shook his head. Gauleiter Koch prohibited evacuation. He claims it would damage morale. Any civilian attempting to flee the city can be shot for defeatism. Outside, the sound of artillery grew louder. By January 26th, Soviet forces had completely encircled Königsberg. The city was cut off from the rest of Germany, isolated on a small peninsula of land with the Baltic Sea at its back. Inside the pocket, 35,000 German soldiers, 130,000 civilians, and diminishing supplies of food, medicine, and ammunition. The siege had begun. Anna kept a diary during those first terrible weeks. Her entries tell a story of gradual descent into nightmare. January 28th. Rationing has been imposed. Each person receives 300 grams of bread per day. Mother says we must be strong. I miss real coffee. February 3rd. The shelling is constant now. We sleep in the cellar. Grandmother prays all night. I try to comfort Klaus, but he cries for Papa. February 11th. The water system is destroyed. We must collect snow to melt for drinking. I saw a woman shot today for trying to leave the city. Uncle Friedrich says this is only the beginning. The Soviet assault intensified throughout February. Marshal Alexander Vasilevsky, commanding the Third Belarusian Front, brought up heavy artillery, including 152mm howitzers and the dreaded BM-13 Katyusha rocket launchers. The bombardment was methodical and devastating, reducing entire neighborhoods to rubble. Inside the pocket, German Commander General Losch faced an impossible situation. Hitler demanded the city be held, but Losch had no reinforcements, limited ammunition, and declining morale among both soldiers and civilians. Worse, SS units loyal to Gauleiter Koch were executing any soldier or civilian suspected of defeatism. On April 5th, Anna's family suffered their first casualty. Grandmother Maria died quietly in her sleep, likely from heart failure brought on by stress and malnutrition. They buried her in the garden because the city's cemeteries were under constant artillery fire. Uncle Friedrich read a brief prayer, and Anna placed her grandmother's rosary in the shallow grave. She was the lucky one, Friedrich said quietly. She died in her sleep. That's a mercy now. By early March, conditions had deteriorated catastrophically. The daily bread ration dropped to 200 grams, then 150 grams, then nothing. Civilians began eating anything they could find: tree bark, leather belts, glue made from boiled bones. Typhoid fever spread through the crowded cellars. Bodies lay unburied in the streets because venturing outside meant risking Soviet sniper fire. Anna's diary entries became shorter, more desperate. March 8th. Klaus is very sick. Fever and dysentery. No medicine. Mother trades her wedding ring for 3 potatoes. Uncle Friedrich hasn't eaten in 2 days. Says he's not hungry, but I know he's giving us his rations. March 15th. Artillery hit the hospital. Hundreds dead. Saw terrible things today. Cannot write about them. March 23rd. Klaus died this morning. He was 12 years old. We wrapped him in a blanket. Uncle Friedrich carried him to the garden. The death of her brother broke something inside Anna. In her diary, she wrote a single sentence: "I will get Mother out of this city or die trying." On April 6th, the final Soviet assault began. 2,000 artillery pieces opened fire simultaneously, dropping over 100,000 shells on the city in just 4 hours. Buildings that had stood for centuries collapsed into dust. Fires raged unchecked. The German defensive perimeter began to crumble. That night, Anna made her decision. "We're leaving," she told her mother and uncle. "Tonight. Through the sewers." Friedrich stared at her. "Anna, if we're caught, we're dead anyway. The Russians will be here in days, maybe hours. The SS will either shoot us as deserters or the city will fall with us in it. We have to try." Uncle Friedrich had befriended a Wehrmacht engineer named Corporal Weber, who'd been mapping the city's sewer system for potential escape routes. Weber provided them with a crude map and a warning. The tunnels flood with sewage and rainwater. Some sections are collapsed, and if the SS patrols catch you down there, they won't bother with a trial. At 0200 hours on April 7th, the Hoffman family descended into the sewers of Konigsberg.
They submerged themselves in the filthy water, leaving only their faces exposed, pressed against the curved ceiling of the tunnel. Anna could smell her mother's fear, could feel her own heart hammering so loudly she was certain the SS men would hear it. Flashlight beams swept through the tunnel. Boots splashed through the water. An SS officer's voice echoed off the stones. "Check every passage. Anyone found attempting to flee the city is to be shot on sight. The Führer's orders are clear." The patrol passed within meters of where they hid. Anna felt something brush against her leg under the water. Please, God, let it be debris and not a corpse, and fought the urge to scream. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, the SS patrol moved on. The Hoffman family emerged from the water, gasping. "We can't stop," Anna said. "Keep moving." They continued through the labyrinth for another 2 hours. Anna's arms ached from supporting her mother. Uncle Friedrich's breathing had become labored. But finally, incredibly, they saw light ahead, a vertical shaft leading up to the street level. Anna climbed first, pushing aside the heavy iron grate. She emerged into a nightmare landscape. They were in the western outskirts of Konigsberg, in a neighborhood that had been completely destroyed. Not a single building stood intact. Fires burned in every direction. And in the distance, perhaps a kilometer away, they could see the German defensive line. Trenches, barbed wire, and exhausted Wehrmacht soldiers. Uncle Friedrich, Anna called down. We're almost there. But when she turned to help pull him up, she saw her mother's face, white with shock. Friedrich wasn't moving. His head lolled at an unnatural angle. He's gone, Margareta whispered. His heart, the exertion. Anna felt tears streaming down her face, but there was no time for grief. We have to keep going, Mama. He got us this far. We have to finish it. They left Uncle Friedrich's body in the tunnel, another casualty of Konigsberg's agony, and ran through the rubble toward the German lines. A Wehrmacht sergeant spotted them first, his rifle swinging up in alarm before he recognized them as civilians. Mein God, how did you— The sewers, Anna said simply. We came through the sewers. Please, we need to get west, away from the city. The sergeant looked at them, a teenage girl and her mother, covered in filth and blood, having survived the impossible. He made a decision. There's a truck convoy forming up behind the line. Medical evacuation heading to Pillau. If you can make it there in the next 10 minutes, they might take you. He pointed toward a cluster of vehicles, barely visible through the smoke. Go. Run. And don't look back. Anna and her mother ran. They reached the truck convoy just as it was preparing to leave. A Wehrmacht medic took one look at them and helped them into the back of a canvas-covered truck. Inside, they found 30 other civilians, mostly women and children, all refugees from Konigsberg. As the truck rumbled away from the doomed city, Anna finally allowed herself to look back. Konigsberg was burning. The ancient capital of East Prussia, home to Immanuel Kant and 7 centuries of German culture, was being consumed by fire and steel. On April 9, 1945, General Otto Lasch surrendered Konigsberg to Soviet forces, defying Hitler's orders to fight to the last man. For this act of humanity, saving the lives of remaining civilians and soldiers, Lasch was sentenced to death in absentia by a Nazi military court. His family was arrested and sent to concentration camps. Of the 130,000 civilians trapped in Konigsberg during the siege, approximately 42,000 died from combat, disease, and starvation. Another 25,000 died during the chaotic evacuation. Most of the survivors, like Anna and her mother, lost multiple family members. Anna Hoffmann eventually made it to Western Germany, where she survived the final weeks of the war. In 1947, she emigrated to the United States. She never returned to Konigsberg, by then renamed Kaliningrad and absorbed into the Soviet Union. But she kept her diary, and in 1989, at the age of 60, she published her memoir, The Girl Who Walked Through Hell. It remains one of the most powerful testimonies of civilian suffering during World War II. In the book's epilogue, Anna wrote, People often ask me how I survived. They expect me to say something profound about courage or faith. But the truth is simpler and more terrible. I survived because others died. My grandmother, my brother Klaus, Uncle Friedrich. They gave me their rations, their strength, their last breath. I lived because they didn't. That's not heroism. That's just the mathematics of siege warfare. Someone always pays the price. The fortress of Konigsberg is gone now, demolished by the Soviets and replaced by Soviet-era concrete blocks. But Anna's story remains, a testament to the ordinary people who endured extraordinary suffering and to the impossible choices war forces upon the innocent.